Hey, Giants fans and football fans, welcome to Giants Grit channel, your fan channel with honest views and reviews about the New York Giants without the theatrics. So please like and subscribe to this channel if you find it informative. Let's keep the YouTube fan channels that are AI generated at the bottom of the YouTube algorithm. So moving right along, the Giants lost 28-3 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and whew, it was hard to watch. This was a tough game to watch. I mean, the Giants not only got smoked, but it was tough to watch because it looked like they pretty much quit in the fourth quarter. A lot of guys making business decisions by avoiding tackles and kind of laying around while their teammates ran to the ball. So, but I mean, it's discouraging when you're getting smoked like that. So, I mean, the players are human, so I could kind of understand. But the play calling was terrible. The game plan was terrible. I don't understand why they only called for 4 non-quarterback rushes in the first half. So that's on the coach. I mean, I know you're outgunned by a better roster in the Philadelphia Eagles, but the Eagles are not the team they used to be. Sure, they're still better than the Giants, but they're not 28-3 better. So that was kind of ridiculous. I mean, it was just really poor play calling and really poor game planning by the coaches. That's on Brian Daboll, and he's got to speak for that. So he's got to account for that. So let me move along with the game review, and then I'll summarize. So obviously Daniel Jones, he's just overmatched. He's a backup quarterback being asked to do what a starting NFL quarterback can do, and he just can't do it. I mean, he was missing his reads. He's locking on his first receiver. Does this sound like a broken record for even when he wins, he's locked. Malik Neighbors was back, and he would just lock on him. So Neighbors only had 4 catches for 41 yards, but he was double teamed with eyes on him all over the place. So what can you do? And Daniel Jones took a beating. He was sacked 8 times. I believe 8 times. Yeah, 8 or 9 times, 8 times. And he took a beating. He was rightfully taken out of the game. And then in the press conference, Brian Daboll says that, moving forward, he just took him out of the game because he was getting a beating and they couldn't come back. But, I mean, Drew Lock didn't fare much better, but even on his incompletions, he still showed a better arm. So I'm not saying Drew Lock is much better of a player, but, it certainly wouldn't hurt to move on to Drew Lock. So that was basically it. Jones he was like 14 of 21 for 99 yards, which is horrible. No picks, no touchdowns. He ran 5 carries for 20 yards. He doesn't even scare anybody on the ground anymore like he used to. I mean, I think he's running at it too quickly. I think he's got to let the blocking develop, let the play open up a little bit. So he's making poor decisions even as a runner. That's how bad it's sunk for Daniel Jones. So as far as the running backs are concerned, Devin Singletary, he got like 5 carries for 18 yards. He only had 1 carry for 1 yard in the first half. Tyrone Tracy had 2 carries for 3 yards in the first half, and Eric Gray had 1 carry for 2 yards. They had 4 non-quarterback rushes in the first half. That alone, Brian Daboll has to answer for. That's ridiculous. You are playing your pass protection is poor. The Eagles rush the passer well. You're starting off poorly. Daniel Jones is scared of the Eagles. Obviously, he's taking a beating against them more than any other team, except for maybe the Cowboys. And then why make it even harder for him by having him play in the shotgun with no backs in the backfield half the time? Go under center and run the ball. Tyrone Tracy, he finished with like 23 yards on 6 carries, but you got to use him. Overall, him and Malik Neighbors next to Andrew Thomas are your best offensive players. Speaking of Andrew Thomas, he was out, and Josh Isuzu, who filled in for him, he looked terrible. I had high hopes for him with the new offensive line coach, but he's either not ready or he's just not good enough, and he probably should not be playing tackle, period. He's a guard that he has tackle skills, but he should not be playing tackle. So As far as running backs, yeah. Singletary didn't look too bad. I mean, the blocking wasn't there. Tyrone Tracy, if I had to give a game ball to, it would be him. He made a couple of runs out of nothing. He had a couple of catches that he looked good. He's just a good player. Tyrone Tracy needs to get the ball more, period. He needs 20 touches regardless of how he touches them. As long as his body's holding up, Tyrone Tracy needs the ball. Getting on to the wide receivers, like I said before, Malik Neighbors had 4 catches for 41 yards. He was double teamed all over the place. I mean, even in the second half, he didn't get the ball in the second half. He was double covered. So much eyes on him. It's understandable. Slayton had 1 catch for 11 yards. He had a contested catch. Jones missed him again where he was wide open on some play I believe it was in the second quarter. Wan'Dale Robinson had his usual 5 or 6 catches. I believe he had 6 catches for like 23 yards. He averaged like 4 yards a catch, it's become so easy to defend the Giants because they basically run around and they turn around. They run curls all day. It's horrible. It's like if it's 3rd and 3, they run. You got 3 receivers running, 3-yard runs and turn around, 4 yards and turn around. It's easy to defend them. The DBs know it, and then they just attack. So a guy's going to turn around knowing he's going to get blasted. And so yeah, that's why the reason why the Giants lead the league in sacks. We're not going downfield enough, and it seems like when we're going downfield, it's to covered guys. It's like Daniel Jones is only going to someone who, if it's predetermined, in the huddle. So anyway, and that was it. Daniel Bellinger, as far as the tight ends, he caught an 11-yard pass. Theo Johnson had what looked like his first touchdown catch for like 7 or 8 yards or so, and he pushed off on offensive pass interference. I mean, it was a push off, but I've seen worse things get uncalled. So, but the blocking wasn't good by the tight end, so that was really disappointing considering they looked decent at it the last couple of games. And getting on to the offensive line had their worst game of the year by far. It looked like 2023 again. I mean, a big deal is it just showed a domino effect of losing Andrew Thomas. Josh Isuzu, as aforementioned, he looked horrible. Everybody else didn't look good. I mean, the Eagles were getting penetration where there were no holes there. But Brian Daboll's got to stick with it. I guess his game plan is, let me stick with my quarterback in the shotgun, and who's not a good quarterback, rather than, let me hand off to my running backs that are, competent running backs, including one who looks like he's got a lot of potential to get a lot better in Tyrone Tracy. Rather than do that, let's go ahead and get this, bad quarterback, make him look worse. So anyway, that was that. Yeah, the offensive line they played a bad game. They were going up against a good team, but they just played a bad game. But again, I call that on the game plan. Yeah, you could say they lost the game because of the lines, the O-line and the D-line. So moving on to the defense. They ran for over 260-something yards. Saquon Barkley had his revenge game, if you will. He had like 179 yards. He could have had over 200 yards, but they took him out around with like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter or so. So I'm not as worried about his quote-unquote revenge game, because they were holding him in check a little bit the first quarter. Like the Giants they were kind of neck and neck with the Eagles for the first quarter, but before the dams broke open, and actually Saquon was the one who did it with a 55-yard run. But I still think over the offseason, letting Saquon Barkley go was the right decision. So now, as far as the interior offensive line, the rest of them, Dexter Lawrence had another Dexter Lawrence game. 2 sacks, 2 tackle for losses. He had about 6 or 7 tackles. I mean, he always makes an impact, more so in the first half than the second half, which is understandable because even he was getting worn down. I mean, it was just the Eagles had the ball so much, and especially in that fourth quarter. So now moving on. None of the other interior defensive line guys did anything of note. Nacho had he had a couple of tackles. He had 1 tackle for loss. DJ Davison and Jordan Riley each had like a tackle each, but nothing of note. They were stuck and they hung on blocks, and then the Eagles running backs were able to get to the second level. So, I mean, there was movement on them, and when they weren't getting movement on them, they just could not get off the blocks. Any non-Dexter Lawrence player. So, Dexter Lawrence now has 9 sacks in 7 games. The Giants are ruining his chance to be Defensive Player of the Year because he is really playing excellent despite all the crap around him. So, Elijah Chapman, though, shows some defensive line prowess. I like he's getting some pressures. He's still getting blocked. He still gets blocked fairly easy on some plays, but on other plays, his hustle's pretty good. So I think we definitely got a player moving forward in Elijah Chapman. The other couple of guys remains to be seen. So definitely they got to visit interior defensive line upcoming draft and free agency. As far as the edge rushers are concerned, Brian Burns is looking like the player they traded for the 3rd game in a row. Really happy with it. We got a little bit of a scare in the second half, like he looked like he'd been hurt. I know he had the groin problem all week. He had like 3 or 4 tackles. He had a sack. He had a pass defense. He had a tackle for losses. He was getting pressures and quarterback hits. He's just looking like a stud. And between him and Dexter Lawrence, it'd be nice when Tibbs comes back. So, and speaking of the Tibbs's substitute, Azeez Ojulari, after a great game last week, shows why he's not starting. He's just really a pass rusher, and he did not hold the edge. And he was responsible for the Eagles, particularly Saquon, hitting the edge a lot. And just, he's a pass rusher, and he should be a 3rd rusher. And even if he leaves in free agency, that's what he should be paid for. So, but nonetheless, hopefully when Tibbs comes back, we can get our 3-headed pass rush monster going there. So Temon Fox came on. He had a sack late. He had a tackle for a loss. He shows he's reasonable depth, if you will. So moving on to the interior linebackers, Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden, they each had 6 tackles each. They didn't do much in coverage, but the Eagles didn't have to pass much. I mean, offensive linemen were getting to them. They were getting lost in the trash. They were making their tackles, but they were doing it downfield. It was hard for them to make tackles. The interior defensive linemen weren't keeping blockers off them. So, yeah, quiet game from both of them, despite what the stat sheet says. Rookie Darius Muasu, he had a couple tackles. He played late, but same thing. I mean, he's getting caught in the trash. I mean, offensive linemen are getting to him, and he's making tackles after the running back makes 5-7 yards. So not a good game for the interior linebackers. Even Matthew Adams, our special teamer who got some playing time, he had a beautiful blitz where he came through the middle untouched, and Jalen Hurts broke his tackle and ran like 15 yards for a first down. So yeah, it was tough to stomach that game. I mean, the game was already out of reach at that point, or getting out of reach. So, but still, it was just bad game for the interior. For the inside linebackers. Moving on to the secondary. Deonte Banks, he looked like he was going to have a decent game. He was, manning up. He looked like he played against Devontae Smith and against A.J. Brown. It was hard to see. I didn't watch all to 22, but he seemed like he played all right. Seemed to keep A.J. Brown in check. However, it wasn't his fault, but when Cordell Flott was covering A.J. Brown for a while, that's when A.J. Brown only had 5 catches for like 80-something yards, but he caught that back-breaking 41-yarder on a 4th and 3. He caught that over Nick McLeod right after Flott got hurt. So Flott was kind of keeping him in check for the most part. A.J. Brown definitely kept Devonta Smith in check. However, they made that key play. And that seemed to be the backbreaker. Not quite the backbreaker, but that made it 14-0. And the Giants really they put 3 points on the board after that, so that was that. Drew Phillips, if the rest of the Giants can tackle like Drew Phillips could, the Giants would have a winning record easily by now. So Drew Phillips looked good. That was, he looks good. He's a good player. He's third round pick. Moving forward, happy with him as a slot. It'd be nice to see him outside, though. I'd like to see them play him outside, but maybe, don't fix what's not broken. And Nick McLeod, as mentioned before, he got burnt on that big play to A.J. Brown. He was playing because Adoree Jackson was inactive. I'm fine with Nick McLeod, though. I mean, for your fifth corner, you really can't ask for more. So A.J. Brown is like a top five receiver, and you have your fourth or fifth string corner on him. So that's on the play calling, not on Nick McLeod. So moving on to the safeties, Tyler Nubin had like 9 or 10 tackles. He looked good, but again, it was tough because the running game was just clicking for the Eagles, and he's got to make tackles down the field, and that's tough to do, and especially when a big back like Saquon Barkley's coming at you with a head of steam. You have to worry about whether he's going to run you over or he's going to juke you. So the fact that he didn't get to make any plays in the air, at least not that I can recall. Same thing with Jason Pinnock. Pinnock didn't really have a good game. I know he had in the tackle on the stats, he probably had like 6 or 7 tackles, but he took some bad angles, and he missed a few that won't show up as missed tackles, but he took bad. He made a couple of lunges towards Barkley and Gainwell that he really should have. He just took really bad angles, at least from my perspective. Dane Belton, the third safety, he didn't get much. He had some playing time, but nothing significant, good or bad. So as far as special teams are concerned, Greg Joseph was 1 for 1. Our new punter, he averaged about 47 yards a punt. Our new punt returner, he did fumble one. Fortunately, we recovered ourselves. Can't blame it on the specials. This game is basically it's on Daniel Jones, it's on the offensive line, and on the defensive line. And the Eagles always beat us, and the Cowboys beat us because they're always better than us on the offense. Their offensive line always beats our defensive line, and their defensive line always destroys our offensive line. It looks like we cleaned that up this year, but that Andrew Thomas injury seemed to cause a domino effect. Hopefully we bounce back next week. So, all right, suck it up, Giant fans. We're trying again next week. So please like and subscribe again to this channel, please. I hope you found it informative. There are a lot of fan channels that are driven by AI. Let's get those down on the YouTube algorithm, all right? Have a good one, Giant fans.